Belmont House was originally built in the early 1800s and it is a listed building. So when we were designing it, we had to be very sympathetic of the existing features and the listed elements in it, to be respectful, I suppose, to the architecture and all of the architectural details. I'm Ellen O'Shea, I'm the owner of Enhanced Interior Design. We provide interior architectural and design services to new builds, renovations and interiors projects. I decided when I was a child that I wanted to be an interior designer, so after school I went and studied honours degree in interior architecture and design. I then went to the UK where I worked for a couple of years in hospitality design and kitchens specifically. So on return to Ireland, I stayed in kitchens for a couple of years. I really noticed that there was a gap in the market. People were coming in with plans for projects and they were just a little bit lost when they were finished with the engineers and architects. I'd often end up redoing plans or helping people picking out tiles and paint colours, which wasn't really what I was supposed to be doing at the time. I saw it as an opportunity to start Enhanced Interior Design and to provide services that could help people with those problems. When I meet clients first, every project starts with an initial consultation. That initial consultation is really important. It's an opportunity for us to meet, to make sure that we get on well, to make sure the project is something that we all kind of share the same vision for and have an understanding of what we want to achieve. When I first came to visit the house, I kind of immediately had a vision of how much potential it had and how we could bring it back to life. It was about talking to the clients and finding out what they wanted. They did want to keep it quite classic. So while we were teasing out the different ideas and different directions we could go in, it did become evident that we were honouring the classic style of the property. So when we were designing it, we had to be very sympathetic of the existing features and the listed elements in it, to be respectful, I suppose, to the architecture and all of the architectural details that are remaining. When we were redesigning it, we reinstated as much as we could and we mended and repaired as many elements as we could. We kind of held back a bit on certain elements that we would have liked to introduce but didn't because they wouldn't have been original to the property. When you approach the house, you'd be surprised as you arrive into it that it is deceivingly grand and spacious. The first thing that you would notice is the height of the ceilings, the windows and just all the period elements. When I first came to visit the house, the one room that really caught my attention was this room here in the lounge. We have the big windows on both aspects and the window behind me looks down onto the river. There's a bit of a waterfall, you can see the valley, and on that day the leaves are all rustling, and when you sat here in silence that's all you could hear. And I think this room is just such a lovely room to be in that I wanted it to just really be one of those lovely cozy lounge rooms that you could just come relax. You can watch TV, you cannot watch TV, you can just sit and look out the window. It's very comfortable, it's very relaxing, but really this room was designed just to do nothing in. I think we've achieved that. I think it is a really cozy space. When we came in first to this room, there was like a leaf and bird patterned wallpaper on the walls, which actually worked quite well with the landscape and the trees outside, but trying to reinstate that, we actually did the reverse. So instead we put the pattern onto the curtains. The embroidered curtains have that detail that I think picks up nicely on the foliage and the landscape outside. The dining room is probably the most classically designed and traditional room in the property. We used a lot of the existing pieces that were remaining in the house and belonged to the family in that room. We chose a lovely rust-coloured wallpaper. It does have a slight shimmer in it, which I think brings a little bit more opulence to the room. The colours in there were inspired from the initial visit. There was a pink colour on the walls and on the ceiling, and to just kind of take that as the lead and develop that a bit further and bring it up to date. What we wanted was a really warm, grand dining space, very typical of the type of dining spaces that we don't really have a lot of anymore. We designed the kitchen based on the scale and the size of the room. In what was previously a dressing room with the tall bank of units, we brought it extra tall to make sure that we were reaching the height of the ceiling, that it was all proportioned. And then the island has a sweeping curve along the back that just follows the line of the windows. We didn't feel the need to have like a formal dining area in that room because we have a dining room, but we did include stools on the breakfast bar and a little breakfast table in the corner. The niche where the window seat is, that was originally a door into this room here, so we built that in to be a window seat with a little breakfast table overlooking the river. One of the big design elements in the kitchen was the stone wall. There's a lot of history in that wall alone. When you look at the stone wall, there's headings and lintels in it from previous buildings that this house was built on top of. You can see the years and years of history that precede the 1800s that this house was built in. So I think even just that wall alone tells a lot of stories and shows us that there is a lot more history to this house than what we're aware of. We didn't put any art on that wall specifically just to use it as a feature and to be able to show it off and tell that story. With each of the bedrooms, we gave each one an individual personality, and the reason for that was that as people come back over the years, they can stay in a different room and they can have a completely different experience. The bedrooms still had to have like a hotel feel, somewhere that you could come and feel like you're away and you're not in your house, somewhere that you could feel completely at ease and relaxed in. So naturally, with a project like this, budget was really important. From the very beginning, we were quite strict. We had to do a lot of work at those very early stages to allocate the budget correctly to each area of the project and know how much we had to spend and where we could splurge, where we could save. But all the work was worthwhile. We actually completed on budget just through knowing and putting all that work in advance and making sure that we were realistic in terms of what we needed to spend and realistic in terms of what we could achieve for that budget as well. When you start a project, you might have a vision for it and what you want. As the project moves along, things do change, and it's just about adapting and designing around those changes to make sure that you do end up with the overall vision still being achieved at the end. Belmont House was a particularly nice project to work on, not just because it's a beautiful house, but because this renovation is only a chapter in this house's story. People are going to be coming here and staying here for probably the next 20 or 30 years. It's nice to be a part of that chapter, to create that space, and its story can continue on for this generation and the next. This has been a really lovely, wholesome project to be involved in from start to finish, and I'm just looking forward to working on more projects like this in the future.